In this video article, we're going to look at Dan Harmon's story circle story model, and this is part one of a mini-series talking about this. Before we get started, if you want to get an email with a time-stamped overview every time I release a new video, head over to my website deliberate-practice.com, sign up for my email list. Coming soon, email subscribers will get the director's cut version of a course that I'm in the process of creating, which is called How to Write Your First Short Story. Now, the video will be made up of 15 to 20 parts. I haven't got the precise number at this point. It'll be 2.5 to 3 hours. It'll be free on YouTube and it'll be a 3-hour runtime, but for email subscribers, they'll get access to it where each section has its own page. Each page will have detailed timestamp notes so they can go over material quite easily. Plus there'll be implementation notes which will help them actually put the material into use and help get them writing. Hence, that's why it's called the director's cut. Let's start this video article with a caveat. The most important learning from this lesson isn't Dan Harmon's 8-point story circle itself, although that might be a model that unlocks your story creativity. Instead, it's this. The 8-point story model was created by Dan Harmon because it more precisely suited his writing needs. And that's something every writer should be thinking about doing, should be doing. If someone says to you, oh, the best writing model is the hero's journey, or it's Save the Cat, or it's this, it may not be the best model for you. There may be elements of that model that work for you, but elements that don't. And even if you think, yes, this is a great model for me, find the things in it that are weaknesses and try and fix them by either putting your own intermediate steps in or by borrowing steps from other story models, so that you create your own hybrid model that suits the kind of stories that you want to tell and helps your writing process. And I define writing process as a system that takes you from generating ideas to outlining them, or if you're a discovery writer, going straight to sitting down and writing the first line, takes you through the writing of the first draft, and then obviously you revise and ship. And story models are a big part of that process, whether you're a discovery writer or an outliner. So you should be looking for a story model that suits you, resonates with you, that you can use and use to tell the kind of stories that you want to tell, more importantly. So let's look at Dan Harmon's story circle. Now, if you don't know who Dan Harmon is, he's a TV writer, primarily known for TV series Rick and Morty and Community. He was the I think he was the showrunner on Community for several years, as well as being one of the chief writers. He made his story circle method by distilling Joseph Campbell's monomyth into a simpler framework, which only has 8 steps instead of the 17 in Campbell's monomyth. I think it's actually more than 17, depending on all of the depending on whether you try and implement all of the ideas that Campbell identified in The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Dan's version is much more accessible for writers. A key point, though, for everyone when people talk about story and talk about Joseph Campbell, Campbell wasn't a writer, he wasn't a novelist, he wasn't a screenwriter, he wasn't trying to help fiction writers or storytellers in any way. What he was a comparative mythologist, and what he was doing was taking the myths from all different cultures around the world and pointing out the similarities that were found in all of these myths. And it was very much connected with the psychological theories of Carl Jung and stuff like that. So it's definitely worth reading Campbell, but he wasn't a writer and he didn't intend his work to be used as a guide for writers. It was only later in his life, I think with George Lucas saying he was very influenced by Campbell for Star Wars, and also then Chris Vogler in the early 80s with his Memo, and then that became the basis for the book The Writer's Journey, which is a great book and I do recommend. So bear that in mind whenever you hear people talk about Campbell and say, oh, his story theories are terrible or blah 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 blah. He wasn't writing from the perspective of story theory and helping writers out. He was cataloguing and codifying other things, which can be adapted for writers, but do bear that point in mind. Here's what Dan Harmon's story circle that he came up with looks like. A diagram there. You can see there's 8 points, and there's other things on the on the diagram as well as the names of each of the steps. And note that each of the steps has its own name, and we'll go through each of those in a moment. And also, as they go on this journey, they go from the conscious kind of mind into unconscious territory, then they go into disorder, and then they come back to order before they return back to stage 1. So 8 points of the story circle. As you just saw there: you, need, go, search, find, take, return, change. So let's look at each one of those individually and just sketch out 3 bullet points for each one. So the first stage is you. That is the character in the ordinary world, in his familiar situation, and I'm pretty sure that Dan used some of Campbell's terminology. But the one thing to really note about the story circle is everything starts with character. So sometimes one of the things with the hero's journey that people criticize it for is that it's very plot centric, and it's very easy to interpret it in a plot centric way. But Dan's story circle is interpreted from the point of view of character. So it's always the character's here, and this is what the character does. So bear that important codification in mind. Another thing that happens in the U stage, the comfort zone of the character is established, and we get to see what the status quo of the story world is, what the character does, the kind of things going on in his daily life, that kind of thing. That's what the U stage is for. The second stage, need. This is where the character recognizes that something is missing, the desire for change emerges, and to meet that change is basically, it's a call to adventure, which again is another Campbellian term, hero's journey style term. But so need is the character going from his stasis point in the U phase and then realizing something's amiss, or the need could be provided by an external event. Something happens that then causes the character to face a call to adventure. Go is the third phrase. In Go, the character starts to enter the unfamiliar world, crosses the threshold to that world. Campbell was very big on threshold crossings, threshold guardians. They're a specific archetype in Campbellian terminology. And remember, the whole genesis of the story circle is that it's a simplified version of the hero's journey as Joseph Campbell told it in The Hero with 1,000 Faces, to make it more adaptable for the needs of working TV writers. And that crossing of the threshold becomes a point of no return. So now the character is committed to moving forwards. Step 4 is search. In search, the character is confronted with new challenges. The road of trials, again another Campbellian term, which means it might meet a sequence of challenges that they have to overcome, or they get knockbacks and they have to rethink. And this stage is all about learning and struggling. Step 5 is find. Character encounters what they truly need. Sometimes this can be done by meeting a mentor figure, or sometimes it can be done with a revelation that happens in the course of meeting challenges. Either way, they make a critical discovery. Take is step 6. Characters claim their reward, moment of triumph, and basically they've achieved their goal. But now they've got to return to their status quo, to their ordinary world, which is step 7, and they've got to head that way back. So it's still a journey, still part of the journey. This is the road back. Taking wisdom back to the tribe is the point of this phase. Sometimes in Campbell's examples for the hero's journey, the road back can be perilous as well and lead to another ordeal. In Dan Harmon's story circle, that's not explicitly mentioned or detailed out. Final step is 8, change. The character is transformed by their adventures. They've learned something new. They've become a wiser, older version of themselves. A new status quo is established, and there's successful reintegration into the ordinary world. And an interesting side note, if you ever want to write a character who's more of an anti-hero, what you can do and makes it more compelling than just being this character is evil because he was born evil, is the character goes through this kind of journey, but then when he goes back to the ordinary world, he can't reintegrate, and that's the first phase, first part of the process of him diverging from society and becoming more of an anti-hero, because he wants to hold on to his powers or his knowledge and not share it with the tribe. So that's just a little side tip for advanced writers. So those are the 8 steps. In the second part of this series, what I'll do is I'll sketch out how the 8 steps of the story circle work with some popular films, so you can get an idea of how these steps actually play out. And then beyond that, we'll talk about how you can actually implement this, and I've got something interesting to show you in either part 3 or part 4 of this mini series. Now, if you like this kind of content, and I'm doing lots at the moment on story models, it meets an external goal that I have. It's the kind of content that I'm putting together and putting into a resource that I'm building called the Writing Vault. You can see the URL there. There'll be a description and a link in there'll be a link in the description below this video, so you can click and go and check it out, see if it might be something for you. It's a resource designed for beginner writers, aspiring writers, frustrating fiction writers. If you think you might be any one of those, go and check it out. It's very cheap. There's lots in there. It grows every day, every week. There's always more stuff going in, and including some interesting AI things to help you. And just so you know, I don't think you should use AI in any way, shape or form to do your actual writing or to do your actual brainstorming to come up with ideas for your stories. But you can use AI in a great way, and it's a perfect brainstorming partner. And I've got some interactive workflows going into the vault that you'll be able to use to help you with those steps. If you've got any questions on any of this, you can email me, paul@deliberate-practice.com, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you for spending your time with this video. I'll catch you again in the second part when I sketch out how these 8 steps work with some popular films. Until then, I'll leave you with some recommended videos from my channel that you might be interested in.